Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region, and welcome to this Free State Colorado interview. Today, I'm joined by John Fabbricatore to talk about his congressional campaign and the violent and criminal gangs tied to illegal immigration in Denver. John is a retired field office director for U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, a U.S. Air Force veteran, and a candidate for Congressional District 6 here in Colorado. Well, John, I hope you are well, and thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, John, let's start with some background. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run for Congress.
Yeah, so my background with government service goes back over 30 years. I joined the United States Air Force right out of high school, became a federal agent in 1996 with the Federal Protective Service, joined INS in 1999, became ICE in 2003 after 9/11. And then I rose up through the ranks in ICE, became a supervisor, supervised some fugitive operations teams, became an assistant field ops director, got into field intelligence, became a deputy field ops director, worked down at the border at Joint Task Force West, and then came back up to Denver and retired as the field office director for all of Colorado and Wyoming.
Wow. You must have had some pretty interesting experiences, seeing a lot of the world and really getting that insight into what's going on with our immigration problems.
Yeah, it was great working for ICE. I did get to travel a lot, filled up two passports from all the different countries that I was able to go to. Really got to see what's happening in other parts of the world. I think, which is really important. It kind of gives you this outlook of really what's starting to happen here in the United States. When you're able to be in another country and you see what that country's going through with their economy and their people and what's actually going on, it gives you an appreciation of the United States. But it also allows you to see when things like what we're seeing right now with this mass influx of illegal immigration and the crime that comes along with that and the gangs that we're going to talk about soon. I mean, it really makes you realize, what we need to do to keep this country secure and to keep having the kind of life that we want in the United States.
Oh, definitely. I couldn't agree more. I've done some traveling and, it really made me realize how easy it is to take things for granted here. We have such an amazing country, so much opportunity that a lot of people don't have. And so, people have to ask, well, why do all these people want to come here? Because these failed socialistic policies
Mhm.
at home, we do not want to replicate that here because we don't want to have those same kind of problems. I couldn't agree more with that.
Exactly. I've talked to so many people that have come over from Cuba, that have come over from Venezuela. I mean, what's the reason that they're leaving those countries? They don't want to come to the United States and have it turn back into a leftist country, right? So, a lot of them that I've talked to, especially the ones who have become United States citizens now, their whole outlook on this is so much different than a lot of other people because they came from a place that had gone to these leftist kind of reasonings and society, and now they're seeing the United States start to turn that way, and they're very ardent about, hey, we can't let this happen, and they want to get involved in politics. They want to make sure that they vote, and it's important that we realize that we don't want the United States to turn into these countries that people are escaping from.
Yeah, exactly. Well, John, with your experience in immigration enforcement, what's the biggest misconception most people have about illegal immigration?
I would say the biggest misconception that people have is that most people who are against illegal immigration are against immigration overall, and we really have to look at the two sides of that coin. So I'm very much for legal immigration. Like it is very important for the United States. It's important to our economy. It's important to our growth as a nation. We've always been a melting pot nation. So legal immigration is very important, and it's something that we should be supportive. With that being said, illegal immigration is not good for the United States, especially at the levels that we're seeing right now, especially with the unvetted people that are being allowed to come across the border. It makes us unsafe as a nation. It does affect our economy. And it's something that we really need to look at. So I think too many people conflate the issue, and they think, well, just because you're against illegal immigration, that you're automatically against legal immigration. And in most cases, that's not the case for most people.
Interesting. Yeah, I would have to agree with that as well. I think a lot of people are just worried about like you said, the unvetted people coming across the border, the crime associated with it, the potential for gangs. So, right now there's this very worrisome situation regarding a Venezuelan gang that seems to be operating in Aurora and across the United States. But according to this Homeland Security memo, which I'll share on the website, they've issued a green light to attack law enforcement. What can you tell us about this?
So, it's very important when we hear these, especially when they come out from intel agencies, because those intel agencies really do a deep dive before they release something like that. They don't just release something off of one little bit of information. So it's verified. They've actually gone through, they've either heard this from multiple sources or found some good intelligence that is coming from this gang, that this gang has released a green light, which means basically they're saying for their gang members that it is okay to commit violence against police officers. Normally, that's something that they would not want to do because in other administrations, if that were to happen, the backlash from local law enforcement would be so great on those gangs that those gangs would not be able to function. It is my belief that they're not afraid to do that now because they really do not believe that this administration will do anything to them. They know that they're getting off on a lot of these crimes. They know that, the deportations are down and ICE isn't being allowed to do its job. And that's part of the reason why I decided to run for Congress. I retired from ICE. I thought I had a great career in law enforcement and looking at all this. And I wanted to really get away from law enforcement after retiring. But when I retired and I saw what was happening and I saw these gangs starting to grow, and I said, I just can't sit home. I need to do something. And having been in law enforcement, I said, well, what's the next level, the next aspect that I can look at? And run for Congress. Legislate. Make sure that these agencies are able to do their job. Make sure that you can open up the books and show the American people exactly what's happening. And that's why I decided to run for Congress because I'm looking at this and I'm looking at what's happening at our border, and I'm saying something needs to be done, but no one's doing anything about it. If I can win this election, maybe I can be a voice of reason there to say this is why we need to follow the laws that are already on the books, and this is why we need to secure our border.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And, I think a lot of people in the Denver area were shocked this last week when they saw that big rally in the Aurora parking lot with over 4,000 people, taking over, firing guns in the air, kind of, rallying around this Venezuelan election results. Because I think for most people, they hear about illegal immigration and they don't realize the numbers. They don't realize how many people that actually is. So to see 4,000 or thousands of people gathered in one spot from this one country, really talking about this one election somewhere else. I think that was shocking for a lot of people.
It's very shocking, the numbers coming across the border, and we don't even really know what those numbers are. We have an idea of what gotaways might be. We have an idea about what ICE has let in, the Border Patrol has let in, this administration has brought in on advanced visas and stuff. We don't know really what the number is. We don't count it during the census. We don't ask people if they're here illegally during the census. So we have no idea what the number is. So something like that, like you said, when an event actually happens and we have people show up and it's almost a shock to the system. And what happened in Aurora would just happen so organically. And thousands of people showed up and they trashed a parking lot. There were some crimes that were committed there, and I think the most alarming thing was multiple firearms were being shot in the air. And some officers that I've talked to said it was multiple shots, not just one or two, over 20 shots in the air. The local PD tried to play it off. The newspapers tried to play it off. Well, it was just guns being shot in the air. That to me is just wrong. Number one, bullets come down. Number two, that you should not be shooting a gun in the air in the middle of a middle of the city. So there's definite issues there, and I think this last example really started to wake some people up to what the situation that we are in could become if things really get worse.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to see, if there's an organized criminal element out there operating within these circles and with so many people involved, and then, law enforcement kind of not being able to do much about it. I mean, it really is a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. We're seeing apartment complexes in Aurora being taken over by Tren de Aragua. They're the apartment complexes. They go in, they extort the people who are there. They're the cleaning ladies there. They extort the managers there. They take over these complexes. There are places in Aurora, Colorado, where Aurora PD will not send one car. They won't send a single officer. They will, if they go to that apartment complex, they're going with their SWAT team and their Bearcat to make sure that officers can walk behind the Bearcat because they're afraid of being shot at. And that we're not doing anything about it, that we're not joining up with ICE, that we're not joining up with federal agencies to clear those rat's nests out. Something has to be done. If a gang gets in there and they are taking control, that's crime being done to the people in that apartment complex. There are victims in that apartment complex. We should be going in there, removing those gangs in there so that people can be safe in their environment and their homes.
When it seems like the local media and local elected representatives don't really want to talk about this issue. They don't want it to get the exposure that it deserves. I have to guess because it's an election year, and it looks pretty bad for all these incumbent politicians letting Aurora, letting Colorado get to this
Yeah.
point, and they don't want it brought up. They don't want people to get fired up and angry on this issue. They don't want to make a scene. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, I just put a post on X this morning. I was reading something in the local news, and there was a gang fight up in Fort Collins. There were multiple shots fired. And I'm reading the newspaper article, and they would not release the name of the gangs, and they would not release the names of those that were arrested. And they said at the bottom of the article, we're not releasing that information because we don't want people to think a certain way about what happened. And I'm like, what is that? Why? Like, we should know as citizens exactly who were these gangs. Were they biker gangs? Were they, foreign gangs? Were they local grown gangs? What were the names of those people? And why would you not release the names? Because you think we're going to think something differently about it. Why not just give citizens the actual honest truth and then give us the information that you have instead of trying to hide it? If you know this was these, say it was TDA, say it was Tren de Aragua that got into a gunfight up in Fort Collins, why not tell citizens that? Why not tell citizens that these were possibly illegally present people that were here? Why not say that? And if it was a local homegrown gang, why not say what gang it was? Why are you hiding information from us? And when you keep information from citizens, what normally then starts to happen? We just start to think in our own head, well, this is what it is. And it might not be that. So now you're making something fester that shouldn't be there. So yeah, there's a lot of issues and a lot of things that are going on. I think the media is very complicit in a lot of this. The media drives the narrative sometimes instead of just giving the information to the people and letting the people research it for themselves. Stop trying to control what we see and give us the information that we deserve to have.
Yeah, very well said. You mentioned a couple names of some different gangs tied to illegal immigration. How many different types of gangs or criminal organizations do you think are operating in Colorado that are tied to illegal immigration?
Many, many. So, even in my career, I mean, Tren de Aragua is pretty new. I mean, they've been around for a while, but really having a foothold here in the United States is only over the last couple of years. I mean, we've seen Serreños, we've seen Norteños, we've seen MS-13. MS-13. I mean, they've gotten even more dangerous now because in El Salvador they've pretty much eradicated them. I mean, their new president came in, built more jails, went in there, went into neighborhoods just like I'm talking about with these apartment complexes, got rid of MS-13. So what that caused is it caused MS-13 to kind of flee because they wanted to get out of that country. They didn't want to wind up in jail, and a lot of them headed north. And because their network kind of got disrupted, they started latching on to some other gangs. And we're starting to see some of that. We have Asian gangs here in Colorado that have large marijuana grows in the mountains and have are moving other drugs through. So we've got multiple gangs that are and I don't like really even using the word gang anymore because it really doesn't link to what a lot of these organizations are. They are transnational criminal organizations, is what they are. When people think gang, they're thinking a small group of guys that don't know what they're doing. That's not what these are anymore. I mean, these are almost like corporations. I mean, they have a hierarchy, they have a structure, they have people that they are paying. These are transnational criminal organizations, and they are all operating within the confines of Colorado, and mostly because we're a sanctuary state, and they know they can get away with a lot of things that they can't get away with in other states.
Right? These criminals are safer in Colorado than in other places, and how
Absolutely,
unfortunate.
they
I
are.
mean, the policies that our governor, the legislature, and of course, our congressional representatives have pushed forward have made Colorado a less safe place for people to raise their families. And it's really unfortunate. And then at the same time, too, you see these same politicians trying to take away guns from law-abiding Americans, making it harder for us to defend ourselves, our businesses, and our families, while
Yes.
creating this safer avenue for criminal organizations to operate. I mean, it's absolutely wild. I mean, do these politicians, do you think they're like, do they know what they're doing? Do they know the what they're creating, what kind of bad situation they're creating, or are they just totally ignorant about this?
I would hope that they're ignorant, because if it's not ignorance and they're doing this on purpose, they are hurting United States citizens and people who are supposed to be here, who are here legally. The Second Amendment, it's so great that you brought it up, because look, it shall not be infringed. Number one, I am that guy. 2A shall not be infringed, but self-defense of yourself and of your family and of others is a God-given right for you. So you should have the means to defend yourself against these criminals. Number one, law enforcement is many minutes away, and violence to you is within seconds to yourself. So if violence comes upon you, you don't have time to reach into your pocket, grab your cell phone, and wait for a police officer to arrive. The number one thing you should do is be prepared to defend yourself at all times. And if that is having a firearm on your person, then that is what you should do. I wholeheartedly endorse that. I believe you should be trained to use a firearm. You should train yourself in self-defense. You should be physically ready, mentally ready to defend yourself. And it's horrible that we have to think that way in this society. But if you don't take your personal protection and personal self-defense personally, take it upon yourself, you are inhibiting keeping yourself safe and your family safe.
100%, yes. What other policies would you like to see enacted? Say if you get into Congress, you talked about immigration, talked about the Second Amendment. What are some of the other issues that are key to your campaign, key to what's driving you towards this congressional run?
Yeah, I'm a very small government guy, and people say, "Well, John, you worked for the government for 30 years," and I say, "Yeah, and that's why I believe we should have smaller government." I've seen how inefficient and ineffective government is. It's a large lumbering creature, and it spends a lot of our taxpayer dollars. So we need to go in and we need to make it more efficient. It should be better run like a business. And there's so much inefficiency with it right now. We're wasting so much of the taxpayer dollar. And with that being said, taxes are a huge issue by me. I don't like the IRS. I don't like how convoluted and complicated our taxes are. Our taxes should be one sheet, easily defined, and we pay too much. We are taxed from the moment we are born to the moment we die, and even after we're dead, they still continue to tax us. So anything that you leave to your children is taxable. You've been taxed on it your whole life, and they still tax it when you're in the ground. So we need to work on that. We need to work on stop overtaxing citizens. There's a way that we can have taxes where we are paying into the common good of supporting our system, supporting our roadways, supporting our schools, supporting our first responders. But they are overtaxing us on everything, and they're not calling it taxes. I mean, they are putting fees and other things on everything that you go to do, and it's a tax. It is a tax. I don't care if they call it a fee, if they call it whatever nice word they come up with. They are taxing you. We need to work on that. We need to work on having better education and better school systems for our children. We're losing internationally. Our schools shouldn't be talking about all this other crap. They should be number one based on education and education only. If it should be going back to arithmetic, English, social studies, sciences, and that's what you should be studying, and all the other things that they're putting in kids' heads needs to stop. So there are a lot of things that I would really want to campaign for. But on day one for me, if I get into Congress, look, when you're a freshman congressman, there's not a lot that you can really do. Constituents always tell me, what are you going to do about this? I'm like, I don't like lying. I'm like, you're a freshman, you're probably not going to be able to do a lot. But the one thing that you can do is you have oversight. You can open up books and tell people, this is what's happening. This is what I'm seeing. This is what we need to change. You can educate people to what's actually happening in DC. And I think that's the most important thing that we can do is open the books, open your mouth, and let people know exactly where their tax dollars are being spent and exactly what's going on in DC.
Well, and I think there's a big connection there too to what you said about the media earlier, where people have this lack of trust because there's a lack of transparency. The media
Mhm.
covers things up or selectively reports on things, so people come up with their own ideas about what that means. And I think we have the same problem with the government because the politicians, because these bureaucrats, they either are so separated from the people that they don't even think to get this information out to the public, or they want to keep it because they don't want it coming to light because maybe it'll hurt their reelection chances, or anywhere in between there.
Yeah.
But I think there's a massive problem with the distrust people have of the political system, of the government itself, because it's so ambiguous, it's obscured. There's not a great understanding about what is happening in DC or even in Denver for that matter. And people say, hey, I can't trust this process. I can't trust these people. They probably don't have my best interests at hearts because they don't give me the information to be able to make those decisions.
Yeah, and to that point, you're 1,000% right. I mean, I believe the media, they're not good journalists anymore. They're not in it to just give us the information. There's so much influencing and it's you look at certain, especially bigger networks and certain ideas that they have. They're leaning in one direction or another, and a lot of people just don't realize that. They choose to watch what they watch, and they're subliminally being given this message, and they're not really being given knowledge. They're being given an opinion, and an opinion is not knowledge. And for me, journalists should be giving you the facts. Like, give it to me straight. This is the facts. Journalists should be a fact finder, lay out the facts, and let citizens be able to go in and research those facts and then make a decision and an opinion based on those facts that are given. And you don't see that in media anymore. You don't see that in the news most times. They are feeding you an opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember reading the newspaper growing up, the Denver Post, and they had the editorials and the opinion pages and the letters people could write in, and it was
Mhm.
pretty clear one or the other, but it seems like a lot of that's disappeared, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
So what can Coloradans do? Coloradans know the problem, right? They see people trying to wash their windows when they drive through Denver. They see the homeless camps. They hear the gunshots go off at night. They see this crime. They know what the problem is. But what can an average person here in Colorado or the Denver metro area do about this?
Vote. Get out and vote. The numbers of people voting are abysmal in the state of Colorado. People love to complain about the situation, but when it comes to them actually being able to do what they can actually do as a citizen of the United States, and the one right that you have, you can always take it to the bank, is voting. And we don't do it here in Colorado. Look, there are races, especially down ballot races, that are lost by a few hundred. We have a supermajority of Democrats right now in the state house. That has caused us to become a sanctuary state, and I can outline numerous laws that have been passed by the legislature here, that's making us a sanctuary state. They're trying to take your gun rights away, and that's because you have a supermajority of one power. And unless you get out there and you're voting every election, even off your elections, you need to be out there. You need to vote, because every vote counts. Whether it's the commissioner, whether it's a judge, whether it's city councils, your state senators, your state representatives. You need to be able to vote on all of those. Anything that's on the ballots, you need to be able to research them and vote for them. That's where your voice counts. That's what you can do. And if you want to make changes in Colorado, you want the Colorado of the early 90s, you want a more conservative Colorado, you want Colorado to go back to being the old Western state that it was, down the middle, moderate state, you need to vote, and you need to make sure that your voice is heard.
Couldn't agree more. And I'd encourage people to, there's voting, and if people feel called to get even more involved, there's people running for office like yourself. Campaigns are always looking for volunteers. People can show up, make phone calls, knock doors, host parties, go to meetups. I mean, there's so much people can do to get engaged in the community. Especially if they find a candidate they like or agree with, or maybe even somebody they oppose, and they want to do everything they can to make sure they don't get elected. There's some good opportunity there for just that citizen engagement in some of these political campaigns, especially in this year, and especially in 2024 when there's so many races to choose from.
It absolutely is. Yeah, and getting involved is just as important as voting. Just like you said, get out there, volunteer, get involved. make a difference. I mean, our civil service as citizens of the United States. Get involved, make your voice heard. That's what you can do.
Awesome. Well, John, please share where people can follow your work and find more information about your campaign.
Sure. So on my campaign, if you want to go look at the campaign page and make a donation, I would definitely appreciate that. It's johnfabforcongress.com. So that's JOHN, F is in Frank, A, two B's, the number four, congress.com. It's John Fabbricatore for congress.com. So you can find it a couple of different ways. I'm also on X, pretty active on X. You can find me at JOHN, the letter E, underscore FABB, Johnny Fab, or just search John Fabbricatore. There's not many of us Fabbricatores on X, so you can pretty much find me easy that way. I pretty much post every day. I'm on most of the social media. You can follow me there. I authored a book called De-Iced a couple of weeks ago. That's on Amazon. It talks about immigration and the downfall of immigration in the interior of the United States. You can read about a little bit about my history and about my feelings on that subject. So there's a couple of ways to reach out to me, and I'd appreciate any questions that people have, and if they want to reach out to me, there's definitely ways to do it.
Awesome. Well, John, I really appreciate your time today. Good luck on the campaign and keep us updated.
Thanks, Brandon. I appreciate it.